I was not seeing anyone. I wouldn't think of, going out with someone else. Paul and I were still together. Not married, but very good friends.
Were you very good friends, or were you an item?
Were
you together?
Involved. Yes.
Okay, that's all I had to hear.
This is the plaintiff, Albert Paul Hout, Jr. He says the defendant is his ex-wife of 20 years. And since they split up, they became better friends than ever, until now, that is. He ended up loaning her money to fix an air conditioning unit. She paid him back some of it, but stopped once she found out he was dating someone and became extremely upset with him. Bottom line, she owes him $3,250. And that's the amount he's suing her for. This is the defendant, Magdalena Castro. She says she found out the plaintiff was having sex with 3 other women at the same time they were supposedly together, and she kicked him out. He did lay out money for an air conditioning unit. She paid him back for most of it, but doesn't owe him a penny more because she gave him a break on paying rent for 6 years. And if anyone's owed money here today, it's not the plaintiff. She's accused of vexing an ex. The defendant has filed a countersuit for $5,000 for unpaid rent.
All parties, please use your right hands.
What you are about to witness is real. The litigants are not actors. They are involved in legitimate disputes, and they have agreed to have those disputes settled here in our forum, the People's Court.
People's Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Marilyn Milianza presiding. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Okay, before we begin, who is Miss Castro?
I am.
And the lady next to you, what's her name?
Barbara Grissom.
Okay, and she is there, why?
Partially as a witness, but because I have a traumatic brain injury, and there's times that
She's going to help you with the evidence and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Hout, you are suing your former wife, Miss Castro, for a debt that you say she incurred when you fronted some money for a repair on an apartment building that she owns. Talk to me. Tell me your story. How long were you guys married?
We were married for approximately 20 years.
Okay, and then you guys got a divorce when?
I think, ma'am, it was around 2017 or 2018.
Okay, and how was the relationship between you folks after the divorce?
We became very good friends. We got along better than we ever did when we were married.
That'll do it. All right, and so tell me what happened here.
Well, she was on vacation visiting family and friends. In May, the air conditioner went out on a apartment that she owns in a fourplex. It was very hot down in Jacksonville. It's hot all the time, but I contacted her on the phone, and she said that if I could just take care of it because he needed air conditioning in the place. She came back and was...
At this point in time, can I ask you a question? At this point in time, where are you living?
I'm living in the same fourplex.
Is this one of her apartments that you're living in?
Yes, ma'am, it was. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so go on.
So she paid me a little bit at a time, and she came over to pay me one time, and I asked her about how much that I owed, and she
Why don't you know? Wait, hold on. Why aren't you keeping your own records of what is owed?
Well, at the time, there wasn't any need for that. Even when I paid her the rent, there wasn't any need. We had that relationship. It was a trust relationship, and I didn't have I've never done that. I never got a receipt for anything like that.
Right, but she's paying you. You should be giving her a receipt. But if were you always paying Ms. Castro by check?
Oh, absolutely. I have a record of every check and the amount and the date that I paid him.
Okay. Yeah, and you submitted that into evidence, and I'm going through it, and you seem to still owe $2,175 on that debt. Why is it you feel that you shouldn't have to pay anything? What went wrong between you guys when you had this great relationship post-divorce that is kind of rare?
I was going to buy a vehicle. I asked Mr. Hout to help me with the paperwork. Because of my head with my traumatic brain injury, I could not comprehend the situation with the paperwork. Paperwork was done. The next day, I found out that Mr. Hout signed himself as owner on the car purchase when I'm the one that's buying the car. He signed owner.
Can I ask you a question?
So
that got straightened out, right?
Right,
Yeah.
because
All right, according to
told
you,
him-
what was the problem that caused her to stop paying Mr. Hout? According to you, what happened was that Ms. Castro and you were kind of an item again, and she caught you with a woman in your apartment. Tell me about that.
Ma'am, we have been divorced for quite a while, for several years. So I met a young lady at Weight Watchers, and we liked each other, and I picked her up at the airport, and Lena even met her in the house, in the apartment. She was very congenial and very warm and friendly, and then the next morning she asked me if my friend had spent the night, and I said yes, and then things changed instantly. Instantly, it was a different story from that point on, and then she became angry and then wanted me to move.
She told you to move as a result of it? And Ms. Castro, does that sound like the reason why things went sour between you two?
We were divorced. We did become very good friends afterwards. It was a joke, like you said. We were better than when we were married. We were honest with each other. I was not seeing anyone. I wouldn't think of, going out with someone else. Paul and I were still together, not married, but very good friends.
Were you very good friends, or were you an item?
We
Were you
sexually
together?
involved. Yes.
Okay, that's all I had to hear. You go, Ms. Castro, go on.
Yeah. I mean, he would call me up and say, "Come on over, I'm making dinner. Let's play some cards." We'd go to bed and make love. We were very physically and sexually involved.
No.
Okay, go on.
Right. So he was always over for all family activities. We would go out to the movies. We'd go to the park. We did everything together all the time. He lived in his apartment. I lived in mine.
Okay. Now, Mr. Hout, the very last payment that you got was in cash for $500, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about that. How did that happen?
I was trying to get the rest of my money from her that she owed. And I texted her and she told me to come by. I came by and met her on the porch of my old apartment, sat face across from her, about 6 feet apart. And after she got through chewing me out and calling me everything but a child of God, she got up and left and walked towards her apartment. And I said, "Lena, you said I could have my money. Where's my money?" She pointed over the brown paper bag. I went over and picked it up since she had already left and looked down in there, and there was nickels, dimes, and quarters and $500 that had been removed from the packaging. And then she laughed about it, thought that was really funny. She even said that they joked about it at the credit union, and she said that was the last money I was going to be getting from her. And then at that time, she said something about wanting her for some back rent. And when I moved in there, we agreed, a verbal agreement, again, nothing in writing, that I would pay $650. And
so he sends you a text at some point in the future, Ms. Castro, and he says, "Would it be possible to meet you and get some money?" And you say, "Ha ha, your sense of humor is laughable. My last words to you on the porch when I gave you $500 was, respectfully, I don't owe you anything more. Go screw one of your sluts and be happy." And your position now, Ms. Castro, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, is that you have been charging him very little rent for a long time, and therefore he owes you money. How do you figure?
He had walked out on me, didn't hear from him for a year, called me up one day and said, "Do I have an apartment he could rent?" And at first I thought, how dare you? And then I thought, he's the cleanest, neatest man, responsible, pays his bills. I said, "Yes, I have an apartment. Come and look at it." They're very nice apartments. It's a nice historic area of Springfield.
Okay, he ends up renting it, and you end up telling him that he can pay what for the apartment?
He was paying $650. The rent was $700.
And your complaint now is based on that you should have charged him more back then.
Well, he said because he didn't have a job, he couldn't afford the rent. So I said,
okay, but how would you then have a legal right to more money now than what you agreed to collect for rent? Just because he's a cheater in your eyes?
No,
like,
ma'am,
what would now mean? How does it mean that he's going to owe you more money for rent now just because you're angry that you were nice years ago?
I agreed to $650, and when he got a job, he would catch up with the rent, and he never did. Because he always told me he didn't have any money.
All right, but here's the thing in terms of the lawsuit, okay? You've got a counterclaim, you've got a claim against her for $3,250 that you say she owes you. But show me your records where you keep track of what you're getting paid and what she owes you. You can't. You're not on top of it. So I don't know how you come up with that figure. I've been over all of the checks that she's written you because other than the $500 in coins, which, by the way, great touch. I loved it. Other than the $500 in coins, you know, so I got to say that brain is working pretty fine. It's working just fine if you can come up. If you can cook that up, things are working. All right. Other than the $500 in coins, all of it is by check. So I've seen every canceled check, and she's really good about writing in the memo line what the check is for. So when I tally it up, I come up with $2,175 that she still owes you. You say that you shouldn't pay it because you were nice enough to charge him reduced rent. That's not how contracts work. He doesn't magically, because you now think he's despicable, owe you more in rent for all the years that you didn't raise his rent. You would have to have raised his rent. The minute that you stopped wanting to provide him with the apartment, you told him get out, and he did get out. That doesn't mean that retroactively you should be owed more money. So you have no defense to the amount that you still owe for the AC. You do owe it regardless of whatever's happened between you. On your counterclaim against him, $0. On his claim against you, $2,175. Verdict for the plaintiff. Good luck, folks.
Thank you, Judge.
So the plaintiff gets a $2,100 judgment. Ms. Castro, what do you think about what the judge just told you?
I can see her point, but there were many conversations through the years about paying me more. He had 3 lady friends that he was screwing around with, but he didn't have the money to pay the regular rent that everybody else was paying. I have a problem with that. And I respect the judge's, decision. She's right.
Well, I bet you got a big kick out of paying him $500 in coins, didn't it? Made you feel good, didn't it?
I loved it. But you know what? The schmuck took it to the bank. I was hoping he would have to roll every single nickel, dime, and quarter so he could remember that payment. Oh, well. We can have fun.
You're something else. Mr. Hout, how do you feel about the verdict? You okay now? Hear what you're getting?
Yeah,
$2,100?
I have nothing else to say.
All right, then I won't ask you anything else. Thank you very much. Okay, let's join the judge and her husband, who's also a judge, for another after the verdict session.
Well, it sounds like there was really no doubt in your mind the money was owed for the air conditioning that had to be fixed. And you got to admit, when you're in a jam or you're out of town, like when the hurricane hit and there was a certain friend contractor who took care of some things at our house,
Right.
like when it got wrecked,
Right.
That's a really valuable thing.
Yeah, it is.
At that moment,
And
right?
I just think that their contract, that debt got murky
Right.
because of the personal relationship between them. And
It was a big part of what happened.
yeah,
here.
and it's pretty clear. And I think she knows it too.
And certainly when you have a relationship between a landlord and a tenant, sometimes it's a good thing to charge somebody less if they're neat, they fix stuff, the rent checks come on time,
And
they
he's
always
your
clear.
squeeze, and he's your boo.
And
you
you've
know?
got benefits. It's
And you've
rent
got
with
your
benefits.
tenant rent with benefits.
There you have it.
Well, Hank, that's a dicey one. If you ran out of money and can't complete the job, it's not just as easy as saying, well, I'll just keep the money and they can finish it somewhere else. It depends on what the contract says. But if the contract says you had to complete the job and they gave you that money and it's going to cost them a lot to fix it and finish it, you may end up having to pay some of it back. And that will do it for this case. Litigants for the next case on the way into the courtroom right now.
This is the plaintiff, Dominique Nelson. She says she rented an apartment from the defendant on a month-to-month basis, and the heartless guy kicked her out onto the street without giving her 30 days notice. If that weren't bad enough, the louse now refuses to return her security and she's here suing for the $1,797 she's owed. This is the defendant, Dana Murphy. He says she's a very nice person who works with shelters to place women into homes who need assistance, and the plaintiff was referred to him by a friend. After living there for only a month, the plaintiff had trouble keeping up with the rent, and he asked her to leave because he needs his rent money on time and in full. Owe her all this money? Come on. He's accused of ruining a rental.
All parties, please raise your right hand.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket. The plaintiff says that the landlord, the defendant, kicked her out of the apartment and she had absolutely no place to go. But the defendant is saying she was just really slow in paying her rent, ended up not paying her rent, and he had no other option. It's the case of rental ruckus.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, ma'am.
All right, Ms. Nelson, you were renting from Mr. Murphy, and you moved in when? April, mid-April?
April 17th.
And sometime in May, is it accurate that you were having a little trouble getting the rent together and paying it all at once?
Yes, some things happened all at once prior to us moving in, so that made it kind of hard, but we still kept up with our payments as best as we could.
All right, well, what did you pay for May rent? Just $402?
Oh, no. I paid more than that. Mr. Murphy was I gave him first a money order. It was two separate ones. One was $1,000, the other one was $395, and then I gave him an extra.
Okay, but that, according to you, hold on. So that money, according to you, was for a security deposit, right?
Well, see, right, that was security, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then what did you pay in rent for April?
He was given $1,795.
Is $1,795 what he was charging for rent for the apartment?
He was actually charging $2,000 for rent.
Okay. So who was going to make up the difference? Were you supposed to pay the difference? Was it social services paying the $1,795 and you're supposed to pay the difference or no?
No. Okay. What happened was they only gave me a budget of $1,500 and I would have to give the rest. The rent is $2,000. So when I was first offered the apartment, I was told all I had to give was $1,395 because that was our first budget from social services. They moved it up to $1,500. And then Mr. Murphy was introduced to me. We gave him what we were sold. My case manager said, give a money order first of $1,395 since that was what your first budget was. And they're going to give him the $1,500 and the check for us to move in. And that's how it went.
Was that $1,500 supposed to cover what month? April?
That was supposed to be for April for us moving in, yes.
Okay.
So I paid
now
for May.
May comes, and on May 1st, are you supposed to be paying rent?
Well, he wanted us to pay rent on May 1st, and that kind of mixed up everything after us giving him this money that we just gave him, the $1,395 money order, and then the $402 I sent straight to his Cash App, and then he wanted money on the 1st, which was like, okay, we just gave you all this money. All right, no problem. We gave it to him. I was a little short, and I did mention that to Mr.
How much money did you give him?
I gave him $1,400.
On May 1st?
Yes, I have that Cash App proof. I gave him $1,400 and told him I was
Okay,
taking
what
the
was
rest.
the $402 for additional rent for? That was for what?
When I first got there, and he said, oh, by the way, I need an extra $402 for next month. And I'm like, well, from my understanding, that was already a part of the $1,395 from what my case manager told me. So I still gave it to him. I still sent it to him. I sent him $402 on April 19th. I have the proof for that as well.
Did you sign a lease? Did you sign a lease?
Yes,
did you sign
I
a lease?
I signed a month-to-month lease with him. Yes, ma'am.
All right, so Mr. Murphy, let me ask you, she moves in and social services is paying part of her rent and everything else, but there is a security deposit. According to her, the security deposit is $1,395, and she wants it back because in May you decided that you didn't want her to live there, correct?
No, so the security deposit was given through DSS, correct? But that security was, I kept the security because she didn't give me a 30 days notice that she was moving out because she already started struggling.
Well, let's talk about that. But I'm reading your answer to the complaint where you say, hey, she can't afford this place and I want her out. And I tell her, right. In fact, according to you, you offered her $1,000 to get out. So you're telling her to get out. So why is it a big surprise that she did get out just like you told her to? What day did she move out?
May 31st, I believe.
Okay, is that accurate? You moved out by May 31st?
We were supposed, yes. Emergency housing came and got us.
Okay, does he actually offer you $1,000 to get out?
He did, and I had that email, and I said to him, you got it. Let me make sure I have somewhere to put my children. My husband and I went to go see if we can get that help, and he said, your landlord has to give you 30 days. We can't help you. He came to me and said, no, I want you out now. And I said that my kids come first, and of course, we're not confrontational, and he knew this. Once they said, you know what, someone's going to pick you guys up, I'm like, just give me time to get my son home from school, and we'll leave. No problem.
Where'd you end up going?
We went to a place, it's like, in Suffolk County called CHI. CHI is the housing place they put you at when you have nowhere else to go. So I was there until May 28th. Actually, May 25th, I was there. I left.
And where are you living now? Did you find a place through assistance?
Yes. No, actually, no. My father had 2 extra bedrooms, so I'm living down south now with my family.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you a question. Who referred her to you, Mr. Murphy? Actually, I'm asking you. Who referred her to you?
A caseworker at one of the shelters.
Okay, but who's a friend of yours, right?
We're not close friends. We just she gave me a few people to move in a few of my properties. More like business
because I'm curious. In your answer to the complaint, I read that you offered the plaintiff the money. The plaintiff couldn't get out fast enough, and then you offered the $1,000 to the caseworker.
Yeah, so she said, give me $1,000 and I'll get her out. And then she ended up finding.
Okay, and did you give the caseworker $1,000?
I did, actually. She got her out the apartment by the first.
I mean, am I the only one who thinks that's seedy? Because that sounds awful. Does she work for the government?
She
shouldn't be pocketing. That's taking a bribe.
Dominic wouldn't take my initial offer for $1,000 to move out.
I don't care that Dominic wouldn't take your $1,000. I care that a caseworker did. Hold on, Mr. Murphy. And what do you say to that, Ms. Nelson?
I am in complete, utter shock at this moment. And then I meet
you
Mr.
know
Murphy.
who the caseworker is that he's talking about. Okay, stop. You know who the caseworker is. Yeah, you need to file a complaint and get a copy of this testimony because that's outrageous.
And I'm going to tell her boss. I'm going to tell her boss.
So that's outrageous if she took $1,000 from him to get you out faster. You need to file a complaint, Ms. Nelson. Now, let me ask you, Mr. Murphy.
Definitely filing
if you ask somebody to get out and they get out and you so want them to get out that you bribe the caseworker or give her $1,000 or, you do it. So you want them out. How are you looking me in the eye and saying you didn't get 30 days notice? They got out exactly when you forced them to get out. So tell me your other reason. Your first reason for keeping the security deposit is that you feel that it shouldn't go back to her because she didn't pay it. Is that right?
No, if anything, if I was to pay back the security deposit, it would have to go back to DSS because they the one that gave me the security deposit. She never gave me a security deposit. She just paid for her first month.
That's not how it works.
That's not true.
You don't get to, first of all, that's not what you said in your answer to the complaint. What you said is she doesn't get it because she didn't pay. But, by the way, May, June, July, did you actually send that money to DSS? No, right? You have it in your pocket, right?
Okay, yeah.
Come on, we all know the answer, right? So, no, that's not how it works. If she has to give it back to any agency, I'm sure they'll chase her for it because they actually know that she's not living there anymore. You don't have any complaint about damages. Security deposit is for damages. There are no damages, and therefore I order the $1,395 to go back to the plaintiff. The additional $402 I kind of don't understand because you lived there in May. Why should you get that back? What did he say to you for why you had to pay $402? Yeah, but he asked you to pay it for what? For April, for May, for what?
For May.
For May?
He said it was pre.
Okay,
yes,
but you lived there in May, so why should you get it back? You're saying that he was, because the lease that you, and I don't see a signed lease here. I do see a lease. Maybe you signed your copy and didn't give it to him, but I do see a lease, and what it says is that the rent is what? What does your lease say?
Hey, it's $2,000. Yes, ma'am. I understand.
Okay, so the 402 would have been to augment the money that they didn't pay. Because how much did they pay you? Did they end up paying you $2,000 for May, or did they end up paying you less?
Less.
Mr. Murphy, less. What did they end up paying you?
They
Go ahead.
paid
What was
me,
the 402 for?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the 402 was equaled up to the $2,000. So they paid me.
Right. So you were asking for the 402 for May, and May you were there the whole month, so you don't get the 402 back. but I am ruling in your favor in the $1,395. Verdict for the plaintiff.
Thank you so much.
You need to pay her. You're welcome.
Thank you. Oh my God. Damn, man.
So the plaintiff is going to get back $1,395. Mr. Murphy, the defendant, let me talk to you for a moment. What do you think about the judge's decision here and finding out that you paid $1,000 to a caseworker? That's not so hot. What do you think?
I think that the judgment was fair. I knew that she was going to end up struggling. She was already struggling the next month to pay the rent, so I didn't want to move forward with her because it would have been an ongoing thing, month after month after month. So I figured we just end the lease soon and just get out right away.
All right. Well, she is out, but you got to give her the money back. Ms. Nelson, let me ask you a question. You seem kind of shocked at the end of the case. Why were you so shocked? What are you thinking?
I didn't expect for my case manager to do exactly what he said she did. So I'm still shocked about that. I'm just surprised that she did that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that you are surprised. Are you going to file a complaint, by the way, about that?
Definitely. I still have her boss's phone number. You know, I still have my connection, so I'm definitely going to take care of that so she doesn't do it to anyone else.
That's very interesting. All right. Well, good luck on doing that, and congratulations. You're going to get $1,395 back.
Thank
and that'll
you so
do it for
much.
this case. Thank you so much. Now, let's join Judge Marilyn Milian and her husband, Judge John, for another session of After the Verdict.
Marilyn, you see a fair number of landlord-tenant disputes where there might be Section 8 housing or there might be some government assistance that's going towards paying the rent, like we had in this particular case. You seemed a little stunned at the money that was paid to the caseworker.
Yeah, it's called graft. I mean, you know, it's a bribe. Do something to make the system work in my favor, and I'll give you $1,000. I mean, it's outrageous. I'm going to make sure that our staff sends his testimony, the tape of his testimony, so that she can forward it to the person's boss. Because if that actually happened, and it sounds like it did, because the plaintiff wasn't going to move, and then all of a sudden, her caseworker says, let's move you, I found a place for you. And so it certainly sounds like that happened. It's an outrage.
It is outrageous, exactly. And there you have it.
Lee, I got to tell you, for those of us who were around during the Judge Wapner time, it was so exciting when Rain Man came out and we heard 10 Minutes to Wapner. It was just one of those moments where you're saying, wow, this show really connected with the psyche of America. It was really exciting for everybody. And I assure you, Judge Wapner was thrilled. And that will do it for this case. Litigants for the next case on the way into the courtroom right now.
This is the plaintiff, Greg Hagler. He says he transports vehicles to make some extra money on the side. And he transported a wrecked car for the defendant from upstate New York to Florida. And the guy still owes him for the move. Things escalated between them, where the cops had to be called. They told him to unload the car and sue him, which is what he did. And he's now seeking the remaining $150 from the double-crossing defendant. This is the defendant, Dylan. He says he never had any agreement to pay the plaintiff this extra $150 because he had to unhook his trailer or something. And he claimed he had to do extra work getting his car onto it. He paid this guy in full, the $1,100 price he was quoted for the job. The plaintiff scratched his car to boot, and he certainly doesn't owe him a penny more than what he's already paid him. He's accused of copping out on a car carrier. The defendant has filed a countersuit for $600 for the damage to his car.
All parties, please raise your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket. The plaintiff says that he was hired to drive the defendant's car from New York to Florida and got stiffed. Now, the defendant saying the plaintiff has been trying to gouge him and charging way more than they agreed to. It's the case of you ain't no Flo Rida.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Mr. Hagler.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
You transport cars on the side?
Yes, ma'am.
So you participate in a website called UShip that puts things out for bid in order to be able to transport people's cars from point A to point B, correct?
That is correct.
All right. So what happened in this case? Tell me.
I placed a bid to move Dylan's vehicle from upstate New York to Florida. I won the bid. The money was put into escrow from Dylan to U-Ship, waiting to be retrieved by me at the point of delivery. One of the agreements with U-Ship is the vehicles have to be ready to be shipped at the time that we say that we're going to be there to pick them up. When I got to the vehicle, not only was the vehicle in 5 foot of snow, but the vehicle had been totaled in an accident. So the vehicle was not ready to be towed, and Dylan was not able to be contacted at that point.
Why was he not able to be contacted?
I really don't know. I think he said he was sleeping at the time of the pickup. He had a representative that met me to help me with the car and give me the keys. He and I both tried to reach Dylan by text message or by phone, and to no avail. We still moved along on getting the car unburied from the snow. I have a unwritten policy with myself that if I have to disconnect from my trailer to extricate a vehicle to get it out where I can get it on my trailer, it's a flat $150 charge. I tried to reach Dylan to advise him that this vehicle was not ready to be towed. I was not informed the vehicle was totaled. We fought with the vehicle for a couple of hours to get it out of the snowbank. I had to pull the vehicle out to the roadway with my truck and position the vehicle in such a way I could winch it up onto the trailer. I secured the vehicle on the trailer. I secured the hood to the car, and I started my journey back to Florida. Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the text. And it's from you to him. Hey, the car was in a snowbank. We had to dig it out and then get it to the trailer. I had to disconnect from my truck and the trailer to pull a car out of the snow. There's going to be a $200 additional charge on extricated his car out to the road. It's taken us over an hour, not several hours, over an hour to load this car when it should have only taken 5 to 8 minutes. So just giving you a heads up. The first time you communicate with him, it's like a done deal in your head from this unwritten rule policy that you have that's not anywhere that, hey, it's going to cost you another $150. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Dillon. What the heck happened to your car?
Oh, it was totaled in an accident, Your Honor.
Did you ever tell Mr. Hagler that it was totaled in an accident?
I don't believe I ever explicitly said that the car was totaled or wrecked. I think it was just stated that the car just didn't run.
Okay. So let's see what happens. Now the car is in his possession. He's driving down from upstate New York, and there is a text, and this does concern me, Mr. Dillon, where, let's see, he sends you a text on Monday. Hey there, just a reminder of the additional fee for extraction, to which you respond, okay. And then he says, and it's $150, not $200, by the way. Why did you say okay, Mr. Dillon?
Simply just to acknowledge the fees. I didn't mean it as a terms of acceptance, but at this point, with the events that had already transpired and how the situation was already brewing, it just it seemed, well, like a scam. So that scared me.
Okay. So you get the car down to Florida, and what happens?
Once he examined the car and signed off that there was no damage on the vehicle, he released the funds for the shipping part of it. And I asked him for the additional $150 for the extrication of the vehicle. At that time, he said he did not have the money. Therefore, I called the sheriff's office in Pinellas County for him to make a determination on whether or not I had the right legally to hold the vehicle. When the sheriff arrived, he told me very quickly that I could not hold the vehicle for that $150, that it was a civil matter, and that I needed to unload the vehicle. I attempted to go ahead and unstrap the car. When I got to the last strap, I did tell Dylan to get in the vehicle, hold the brake, because the vehicle had no brakes. Once I released that strap, the vehicle was going to go off the trailer. And he got a little on the belligerent side, being very uncooperative at that point. Things just took 100.
Because he thought you were saying you were going to let it go, and who knows what's going to happen. In fact, according to you, what was it Mr. Hagler said, Mr. Dillon?
Welcome back to the People's Court. So the plaintiff says that this job of driving the car or taking the car from New York to Florida was way more difficult than first thought because the car got stuck and encased in ice, and it took 2 hours to get it out and should cost a lot more. The defendant saying, no way, a price that we agreed on is the price. Let's go back into the courtroom.
Said hop in the vehicle because I'm going to let this strap go, and when it does, this car is going to end up wherever it ends up. To which I replied, I'm not going to do that. If you want to let the car roll, then that's on you. And yeah, he let it go, rolled over the curb.
And what happened?
It just rolled back and rolled over the curb. It was nothing crazy, honestly.
Okay. I have a question for you. You have a counterclaim against him now for $600. What's that about?
The hood and the fenders for the vehicle were scratched to bare metal.
You're saying that these scratches on the car are his fault?
Yes.
Okay, why do you not see that, which is so visible, before you release the funds and say everything's fine?
I released the funds initially as soon as the car got there.
But that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to make sure there's no problems.
Yes, you are perfectly right, Your Honor.
Right. All right. So on your counterclaim against Mr. Hagler, Mr. Dillon, 0. And on Mr. Hagler, on your claim against Mr. Dillon, let me explain to you what the problem is. A contract happens when both sides agree to it. A contract doesn't happen when you've got his car and then you say, by the way, I'm changing the terms because I feel like I went through too much trouble just now. So you don't get to change the rules. If you're going to go ahead and do the work and then tell him afterwards, by the way, you owe me $150, that's not a contract. And he doesn't have to pay you that. So on your lawsuit, Mr. Hagler, against Mr. Dillon, I find in favor of Mr. Dillon. On Mr. Dillon's counterclaim, 0.
So we have a 0-0 tie here in the People's Court. Mr. Hagler, the plaintiff, you just got a lesson in the law from the judge. What do you think about that?
I was basically just tossing everything to the wind on whether or not I would receive those extra funds. And I even offered to cut the fees in half, and I told him that if he paid $75, just, pay me something extra for all the extra work we had to do to get the car out to be towed.
Well, you've heard the judge. Maybe you should change your practices the next time you go trailering some cars.
I will.
Okay?
I
Good
will.
luck to you. Sorry you lost. All right, Mr. Dillon, there's all this talk about the car being totaled. Number one, if it was totaled, was it really worth paying $1,100 to have it taken down to Florida from New York?
Yes, absolutely, sir.
Why? What'd you get for it? I mean, a totaled car is not worth a lot of money sometimes.
No, you're absolutely correct. But the initial idea was to part out. And whereas the judge was correct, I should have inspected prior to having it released. But with how the situation evolved, the car, like I had told the judge, she agreed that it dropped off the trailer. But I didn't have a say in it at that point. They were gone. So I saw the scratches, filed an insurance claim, and that's gone nowhere.
All right. Well, sorry you didn't win your case. That's the way it goes in court some days. Okay, thank you. All right, let's join Judge Millian and her husband, Judge John, for another edition of After the Verdict.
Well, Marilyn, it seems like neither party in this lawsuit really took the basic steps that they should have taken to protect themselves at the beginning of the transaction. In other words, the guy who's going to ship the car, who was the plaintiff here, he could have taken photographs. He could have walked around and done a better inspection. And again, on the other end, it seems like the ball was dropped as well.
Yeah, the thing is, you can't advertise, be the lowest bid, win, and then change the rules.
Right.
So I don't write down this policy. It's an unwritten policy I have. You don't get to have unwritten policies because I might not have picked you. But if he wants any extra money for anything that he was going through, he needed to have secured the defendant's approval of it.
And did you have any idea that there was a market for shipping totaled cars? And someone would pay $1,200?
I don't even, I'm not even sure what kind of car this was. Obviously, if he was able to get $5,000 for it, it was
the value must be there.
Yeah, value must be there.
Why else would somebody spend that kind of money to ship it?
Right.
Well, Mike, here's the thing. In most states, usury is anything over 10% where you can't get any interest if you try to gouge. Yet credit card companies can charge 18%. It's an exception. You are stuck with a lower limit.